Picture this. You're lying in bed late at night, heart pounding, because you sense someone else in the room, yet you're alone. Or maybe you get a call from a loved one who has long been dead, only to have the line go silent when you pick up. Creepy. Absolutely. But also strangely electrifying. Are these eerie experiences just coincidences, illusions, or are they cracks in the wall between life and death? Today, we're launching you head first into 7 jaw-dropping pieces of evidence that many believe prove the afterlife is real. Cases so bizarre, so chilling, you might never see reality the same way again. Buckle up. From mind-bending near-death experiences to ghostly phone calls, we're diving into a realm where logic stumbles and the impossible becomes disturbingly possible. Brace yourself. Once you open this door, it may never truly close. The AWARE study. Patients who were dead but heard it all. Let's kick things off with a piece of research that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The Awareness During Resuscitation AWARE study, spearheaded by Dr. Sam Parnia. If you think clinical death seals the deal for consciousness, these findings will make you question everything. A radical experiment in cardiac arrest in hospitals across the UK, US, and Europe. Dr. Parnia and his team placed hidden images on high shelves in operating rooms, images that could only be seen from above. The logic was simple. If a patient undergoing cardiac arrest truly had an out-of-body experience, OBE, they might later recall seeing these images. Meanwhile, the study also recorded the experiences of hundreds of resuscitated patients, collecting details about what they saw, felt, and heard while clinically dead. Moments of impossible clarity. One of the most shocking revelations involved a patient who accurately described the conversations of the medical staff during his period of cardiac arrest. This man had no heartbeat and no measurable brain activity, yet he recalled the sequence of events, identified the instruments used, and even recounted specific words spoken, information that matched hospital records. While the hidden images went largely unreported, the sheer volume of people claiming crystal-clear awareness, sometimes from vantage points above their bodies, defies typical scientific explanations. Traditional medicine says consciousness depends on a functioning brain, but according to these patients, they seem to possess an almost enhanced awareness even when brain activity had flatlined. Implications for life after death. For skeptics, the study is inconclusive, a puzzle without a neat solution. But for believers, it's a giant neon sign flashing. Consciousness survives the body. Dr. Parnia's goal is not to prove an afterlife, but to explore how the mind might continue even when all biological systems fail. In doing so, he's cracked open a door that modern science can't easily shut. If just one of these detailed accounts holds true, it suggests we might be more than mere electrochemical impulses, and that death might be less a final stop, more a corridor into something else. Terminal lucidity. The astonishing comeback before the end. Imagine visiting a beloved grandmother at a hospice. She's bedridden, ravaged by dementia, unable to recognize anyone. Then, mere hours before her passing, she suddenly snaps back, calling you by name, reminiscing over old memories, and speaking with clarity as if her mind had never deteriorated. This bizarre phenomenon is called terminal lucidity. It's as if the dying brain receives one last spark, bridging the gap between this world and perhaps the next. A mysterious final rally. Medical reports date back centuries, describing patients with advanced dementia, tumors, or Alzheimer's who, in their final days or hours, regain full mental function. They might chat openly, resolve unfinished business, or even demonstrate knowledge of events they previously seemed unaware of. Families often see it as a small miracle, while doctors stand by, puzzled. Theories versus reality. Neurological flair. Some experts propose that the body, in crisis mode, unleashes a final chemical surge. Spiritual release. Others interpret the bow event as the soul taking one last bow, freed momentarily from the constraints of a diseased brain. Regardless of one's perspective, these cases challenge the assumption that consciousness is tied strictly to healthy brain tissue. After all, how could a brain thoroughly damaged by disease suddenly function at near 100% capacity? Some researchers consider terminal lucidity an enigma that might point to a greater continuity of consciousness beyond bodily decay. A comfort in the darkness. For many families, terminal lucidity feels like a sacred farewell, a chance to exchange final words. And for the countless people who witness it, the question inevitably arises: if the dying mind can rally so powerfully, maybe the end is not quite the end. Near-death experiences, NDEs. With veridical perception, you've probably heard of near-death experiences: white lights, tunnels, departed loved ones. But here's the real stunner. Some NDE survivors report verifiable knowledge they shouldn't logically have. Maybe they floated outside their hospital room and recalled a conversation in the waiting area, or described events on another floor entirely. These are the kinds of details no unconscious patient should know. Rosalind's unseen shoe, a famous anecdote, involves a patient named Rosalind who apparently found herself drifting above the hospital's roof during a cardiac arrest. Later, she told a staff member about a tennis shoe lying on a ledge outside a top-floor window, down to describing its color and the worn patch on its side. Intrigued, the staff investigated and, sure enough, found the shoe exactly as described. Consistency in the afterworld. Though each NDE is personal, a remarkable number of experiences share common themes. A tunnel or passage of light. Encountering deceased relatives or even unknown ancestors. A sense of peace, unconditional love, or cosmic unity. Skeptics point to brain chemistry under stress, flooded with endorphins, DMT, or oxygen deprivation. Yet no single physiological explanation captures how patients accurately describe objects or events they witnessed, while presumably unconscious. Insights that defy skepticism. These accounts aren't the ramblings of the gullible or hopelessly spiritual. They often come from doctors, nurses, or even self-proclaimed atheists shocked at what they experienced. Some survivors say the other side is more real than anything they've ever known. Could it be a mere hallucination, or is it a fleeting peek at life beyond the body? If consciousness can observe physical reality even when the brain is offline, it implies consciousness itself may not be wholly biological. That question alone cracks open 1,000 new mysteries. Children who remember past lives. The overlooked evidence. If you want an unsettling yet powerful case for the afterlife, look no further than young children who start recalling places and events they could never have encountered in their current life. It's one thing for an adult to claim reincarnation, but a toddler who spontaneously identifies a remote village, names strangers who turn out to be real people, and describes hidden objects found exactly where they said. That's next level, baffling. The boy from India and his murder. In one widely reported example, a boy, name withheld, insisted he had been killed in a previous life. He pestered his parents to take him to a neighboring village, describing the precise layout of streets and a home he'd never visited. Once there, he correctly identified the spot where his body had been left after the murder. Even more shocking, the boy's birthmark allegedly lined up with the lethal wound described in local police records. Dr. Ian Stevenson's methodical approach. The late Dr. Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia meticulously documented over 2,000 such accounts worldwide. He'd interview families, cross-check statements, and verify historical events. His research revealed repeated patterns: children aged 2 to 5 spontaneously talking about a past identity, naming names, recalling family members, even referencing occupations or locations that matched real individuals who had died. Implications versus coincidence. Could it be random facts gleaned from overheard conversations? That's the skeptic's favorite angle. Yet in many cases, the details are too obscure for chance. These kids talk about personal items locked away for decades or inside jokes known only to the deceased person's circle. Such specificity has forced open-minded investigators to wonder if the soul, or some part of consciousness, migrates from one body to another. Even if you remain unconvinced, hearing a 4-year-old recite the complexities of a past existence, dates, names, relationships, can shake your sense of reality like a quake. Mysterious electronic voice phenomena, EVP, and phone calls from the dead-on of the strangest reported types of afterlife evidence comes from modern technology. People have claimed for decades that they received phone calls from deceased loved ones or captured voices in white noise or radio static that seemed to address them directly. While it sounds like a horror movie cliché, these electronic voice phenomena, EVP, have been recorded and catalogued by paranormal researchers worldwide. The chilling case of Charles Peckin, 2008, a devastating train accident in California claimed at least 25 lives. Among the victims was Charles Peck. Yet in the 11 hours following the crash, when he was presumed dead, his cell phone dialed his fiancée and other family members numerous times. Each call contained only static or faint clicking sounds, but it gave everyone hope that Charles was somehow still alive, trapped among the wreckage. Rescue teams tried to trace the phone's location, but never found the phone itself. Ultimately, they discovered Charles had died on impact. The calls, though, kept coming. Radio recordings from nowhere. From the famed pioneer Friedrich Jürgensen, who stumbled upon eerie voices while recording birdsong in the 1950s, to contemporary ghost hunters capturing disembodied words through spirit boxes, the phenomenon of hearing meaningful speech in static refuses to vanish. Skeptics chalk it up to audio pareidolia, our brains assigning patterns to random noise. But some examples are so specific, like voices referring to personal private matters, that the simple coincidence explanation grows thin. A bridge through frequency, whether by phone or radio static, the notion that deceased individuals manipulate electronic devices to reach the living is both thrilling and unsettling. If these calls and voices are real, they hint that the boundary between life and death can be crossed with the right frequency. Imagine what that implies. Intangible souls using electromagnetic waves to say a final goodbye. Though conventional science remains deeply skeptical, countless families who've experienced these bizarre communications find comfort, an affirmation. Their loved one's essence lingers, trying to break through. Deathbed visions. Glimpses of another realm. It's a scene you might recognize. Someone nearing death suddenly brightens, gazes at a corner of the room with an expression of awe, and whispers they see a deceased spouse or parent who's come to guide them home. Such deathbed visions occur with surprising frequency, spanning cultures and religions. Family members often recount these final moments with wonder, describing how their loved ones seemed more peaceful, as if crossing a threshold, witnessing the unseen. Hospice nurses around the globe have anecdotal accounts of patients who, in their last hours or days, report seeing angels, loved ones, or even radiant beings that ease their transition. Sometimes, the patient will call out names of individuals who died long ago, names the younger staff might not even recognize, but which turn out to be real upon checking old records. Notably, these visions are seldom accompanied by fear. Instead, the dying person often appears calm or even joyous, as if greeting old friends. In one documented case, a woman stricken with terminal cancer, barely coherent for days, suddenly sat up and addressed her late mother, urging her not to worry. Minutes later, she took her final breath, a serene smile on her face. A shared encounter even more confounding are shared death experiences, where loved ones in the room claim they, too, see or sense something unexplainable, a burst of light, a sensation of leaving their bodies briefly, or fleeting glimpses of an apparition. Though critics dismiss these as grief-induced hallucinations, the consistency of these stories in palliative care environments is staggering. What it suggests about consciousness. Deathbed visions challenge the notion that the mind collapses into confusion as the body fails. Instead, some part of the dying individual appears to gain clarity about a reality beyond the material. Nurses who've witnessed multiple cases often emerge convinced that these visions are more than delusions. They speak of them as gifts, final moments that reaffirm the possibility of an afterlife. Shared near-death experiences, SNDEs. The ultimate twist: if near-death experiences are already incredible, then SNDEs, shared near-death experiences, take the concept to an entirely new level. Imagine your best friend is passing away, and as you hold their hand, you begin to see a light or sense a pull into some other dimension. Your friend might be clinically gone, but you experience a surreal journey alongside them, without being near death yourself. A real-life tale of the unexplainable. Numerous anecdotal reports describe precisely this phenomenon. For instance, a man named Edward sat with his dying wife in her final hours. As she slipped away, Edward claimed he felt drawn upward, glimpsing a radiant environment where he sensed other presences waiting. He snapped back to normal, reality, the moment his wife's heart monitor flatlined. Shaken yet oddly comforted, he insisted he shared a slice of her transition. Such events are extremely rare, but they surface often enough to intrigue a select group of researchers, including Dr. Raymond Moody, a pioneer in NDE studies. They argue that if a healthy person can tap into the dying individual's near-death vision, that strongly implies the experience is not solely a function of a brain shutting down under stress. Instead, it suggests an interpersonal or even transpersonal dimension of consciousness. Possible explanations: energetic transfer. The idea that two people deeply bonded can momentarily share states of consciousness. Quantum entanglement of minds. A highly speculative theory, but one that posits consciousness might be connected on a level we don't fully understand. Regardless of your interpretation, the SNDE phenomenon twists our usual beliefs about isolation in death. It suggests that dying could be a communal experience, an event that merges realities, if only briefly. Implications: if even one SNDE is authentic, then the boundary between the living and dying mind is permeable. We're left with a stunning possibility. The so-called afterlife may be an actual realm that, under the right conditions, can be glimpsed by those still firmly planted in this world. Further reflection. No conclusion yet. What if death isn't the exit from stage left, but the beginning of a grander act? Each of the 7 proofs we've just explored brims with implications that challenge the simplest assumptions about who we are and why we're here. Science grapples with these claims, testing them from all angles, but the data stubbornly refuses to slot neatly into a purely materialist framework. Instead, we find anomalies, patterns, and profound personal accounts that speak of a bigger reality. For many, these proofs become anchors of hope, lighthouses shining through the dark storms of grief. Parents who lost children to accidents find solace in the possibility of contact through EVPs or vivid dreams. Hospice nurses, having witnessed countless deathbed visions, whisper that we're not alone in our final moments. Heartbroken spouses replay the last phone call from a partner who died days prior. Calls that official records confirm came from a disconnected number. All these events appear random until you sense a hidden thread tying them together. The suggestion that our consciousness persists. Skeptics will say no single story can be definitive, that the mind is notoriously susceptible to illusions. They highlight how the desperate longing for comfort might lead to self-deception. But can wishful thinking alone explain the specificity of a hidden shoe on a hospital roof, or a child's knowledge of a murder scene in a faraway village? Is it all an improbable tapestry of hoaxes, illusions, and coincidences? Some might find it easier to dismiss, yet curiosity remains, echoed in the repeated question: could there be something beyond the final breath? Religious traditions worldwide say yes. Indigenous cultures, from the Americas to Australia, hold ceremonies that honor ancestors as if they are still very much alive in spirit. Even in the digital age, as we push boundaries with AI and quantum computing, we circle back to the same primal wonder: are we more than flesh and bone? From the vantage point of these astonishing accounts, the afterlife is not a nebulous fantasy. It becomes a living possibility, an uncharted domain into which each of us will eventually venture. Modern research into consciousness only amplifies that sense of mystery. If the brain can be off, yet experiences continue, then consciousness might be a fundamental part of reality, akin to space and time. Could it be that what we call death is simply the moment we slip out of one mode of being and into another? Ultimately, the path forward depends on personal encounter. Some readers might remain unconvinced, refusing to accept anything but tangible proof. Others might have had their own unexplained brush with the beyond, an experience that, no matter how many rational explanations they hear, still glows with an unearthly conviction. The topic of life after death stirs something deep within us, speaking to that unnameable drive to connect, endure, and find meaning. In the sections above, we've traveled through hospital corridors where clinically dead patients listened, across rooms where the dying see radiant visitors, along beaches where children recall lives that ended abruptly, and into labs where data defies a tidy explanation. No matter where you stand, these stories rattle the cage of conventional thought, inviting you to imagine a cosmos that's bigger, stranger, and more benevolent than we dare dream. Further exploration. Historical perspectives on life after death throughout human history. The question of what happens after death has been a profound mystery that has shaped civilizations, religions, and art. Ancient texts, religious scriptures, and mythologies across the globe hint at an existence beyond the physical world, a realm where the soul endures and where life, in some form, continues. In ancient Egypt, the elaborate funerary rituals and the construction of monumental pyramids were not solely about preserving the body. They were acts of faith in an eternal life, a belief that the soul journeyed into the afterworld, where it would face judgment, reunite with loved ones, and eventually live in a paradisiacal realm. The concept of the ka and ba, the spiritual essence and the personality, illustrates how the Egyptians viewed death as merely a transition, not an end. Similarly, in Hinduism and Buddhism, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is fundamental. The belief in karma, where every action influences future lives, encourages moral living by implying that each life is interconnected. These ancient perspectives provide an emotional and philosophical framework that resonates even today, suggesting that our existence is part of a vast, unending cycle of transformation and renewal. Modern scholars have also found fascinating parallels between ancient wisdom and current research into near-death experiences, NDEs. Some suggest that what ancient mystics called the journey of the soul might correspond to observable phenomena such as terminal lucidity, where a dying person experiences a moment of clarity and peace. In these fleeting instances, the boundary between life and death appears blurred, offering glimpses of a reality where consciousness persists independently of a functioning brain. The role of religion and spirituality. Religious teachings across cultures often serve as a repository of humanity's collective inquiry into the afterlife. Christianity, for instance, promises eternal life through resurrection, a central tenet that has inspired hope, art, and philosophy for millennia. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is viewed not just as a miraculous event, but as evidence that death is not the final word. For believers, this is a promise of redemption and an eternal bond with the divine. Islam, too, teaches that life continues after death in a realm where one faces judgment and is either rewarded with paradise or punished. The Quran speaks of a life that is more significant than the transient moments we experience on earth, urging the faithful to lead lives that will guarantee a favorable outcome in the hereafter. Even indigenous cultures have their own unique narratives of the afterlife. Many Native American tribes, for example, speak of the spirit world as a realm of harmony, where the souls of the departed join the natural cycles of the earth, contributing to the balance of life. In Australia, Aboriginal Dreamtime stories describe a timeless state in which ancestral spirits remain, guiding and protecting the living. Across these varied spiritual landscapes, a common thread emerges. Death is not an end, but a doorway, a transformative passage into another state of being. This understanding has a profound psychological impact on how communities grieve, celebrate, and even prepare for death. The rituals surrounding death, from elaborate ceremonies to quiet moments of remembrance, serve to reinforce the belief that the essence of a person continues to influence the world in ways both subtle and overt. Modern technology meets the afterlife in recent decades. Technology has begun to play an unexpected role in the exploration of life after death. Electronic voice phenomena, EVP, for example, have been recorded by paranormal investigators using simple digital recorders and even smartphones. These recordings, often dismissed by skeptics as auditory pareidolia, sometimes contain clear phrases or sounds that seem to carry personal significance. People claim to have heard voices of deceased relatives speaking in tones that match their mannerisms, or even providing specific messages that resonate with events known only to the departed. Similarly, ghost cameras and thermal imaging devices have captured inexplicable images, fleeting apparitions caught on film that vanish when researchers attempt to focus on them. Virtual reality and augmented reality have further pushed the boundaries of our understanding, offering simulated experiences that mimic what many describe as glimpses into the afterlife. Some futurists even speculate that one day we might be able to interface with digital recreations of deceased loved ones, blurring the line between memory and reality. The idea that technology could act as a bridge between life and death is both thrilling and unsettling. It challenges our deeply held beliefs about what it means to be alive, suggesting that there might be a way to capture or even interact with consciousness beyond our physical bodies. While mainstream science remains cautious, the growing body of anecdotal evidence, coupled with rapid advances in technology, keeps the door open to revolutionary discoveries about the nature of existence. In ancient Egypt, the elaborate funerary rituals and the construction of monumental pyramids were not solely about preserving the body. They were acts of faith in an eternal life, a belief that the soul journeyed into the afterworld, where it would face judgment, reunite with loved ones, and eventually live in a paradisiacal realm. The concept of the ka and ba, the spiritual essence and the personality, illustrates how the Egyptians viewed death as merely a transition, not an end. Similarly, in Hinduism and Buddhism, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is fundamental. The belief in karma, where every action influences future lives, encourages moral living by implying that each life is interconnected. These ancient perspectives provide an emotional and philosophical framework that resonates even today, suggesting that our existence is part of a vast, unending cycle of transformation and renewal. Modern scholars have also found fascinating parallels between ancient wisdom and current research into near-death experiences, NDEs. Some suggest that what ancient mystics called the journey of the soul might correspond to observable phenomena such as terminal lucidity, where a dying person experiences a moment of clarity and peace. In these fleeting instances, the boundary between life and death appears blurred, offering glimpses of a reality where consciousness persists independently of a functioning brain. The role of religion and spirituality. Religious teachings across cultures often serve as a repository of humanity's collective inquiry into the afterlife. Christianity, for instance, promises eternal life through resurrection, a central tenet that has inspired hope, art, and philosophy for millennia. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is viewed not just as a miraculous event, but as evidence that death is not the final word. For believers, this is a promise of redemption and an eternal bond with the divine. Islam too teaches that life continues after death, in a realm where one faces judgment and is either rewarded with paradise or punished. The Quran speaks of a life that is more significant than the transient moments we experience on earth, urging the faithful to lead lives that will guarantee a favorable outcome in the hereafter. Philosophical and scientific inquiries at the heart of the debate over life after death is the question, what is consciousness? Traditional neuroscience posits that our thoughts, memories, and emotions are the product of electrical and chemical processes in the brain. But near-death experiences, terminal lucidity, and shared near-death experiences raise profound questions about whether consciousness can exist independently of the physical body. Some researchers argue that consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe, akin to space, time, or gravity. Quantum theories of consciousness propose that the mind could be linked to the quantum field, allowing it to transcend the physical constraints of the brain. Such theories, though controversial and not widely accepted, invite us to consider that our subjective experience might be part of a larger, non-local phenomenon. Philosophers have long pondered these mysteries. Dualism, the idea that mind and body are separate, has found new life in modern discussions about the afterlife. If the mind is not solely tied to the brain, then perhaps it survives physical death, continuing on in some uncharted dimension. The implications of such a reality are staggering. It would mean that every emotion, every decision, and every piece of knowledge carries forward, shaping not just our next life, but possibly influencing the fabric of reality itself. These scientific and philosophical inquiries are not merely abstract musings, they affect how we live our lives. If we accept that death is not a definitive end, it transforms our approach to morality, purpose, and even our relationships. The idea of an eternal soul encourages a sense of responsibility, not only for our actions in this life, but for the legacy we leave behind. It's a reminder that every act, every kindness might ripple through time, influencing lives and realities we can scarcely imagine. Personal impact and transformation. For many, the belief in life after death is not just an intellectual exercise, it's a deeply personal conviction. Consider the comfort a grieving family might feel when they interpret unexplained phenomena. A comforting EVP on a quiet night, a vivid dream of a departed loved one, or even a sudden sense of presence during a moment of despair, as proof that those they love never truly leave them. Such experiences can be transformative, providing solace and a renewed sense of purpose in the face of loss. Countless individuals who have reported near-death experiences describe a profound shift in their worldview. They emerge from these encounters with a deepened sense of compassion, a reduction in the fear of death, and an overwhelming appreciation for life's mysteries.